It all happened like I knew it would. A single drop of source magic. And, like flies to honey, the monsters swarmed. The rebel panicked. The carnage began. And the Magisters pointed their fingers at me. Just as I'd planned. I was shackled and collared, and sent to Fort Joy. I'd come here to kill Godwoken. But instead, I became part of their story. The Eternals returned to the world. In the eyes of the God King, Fane was redeemed. He returned to his studies. Dwarves, elves, lizards, and humans all became slaves, ruled over by the Sworn and the Eternals. The God King had defeated the Seven and returned from the void. Relics of the old world remained, but in time they crumbled and fell, like the memories of the peoples who had built them, lost to time like sand in the wind. But not lost to Fane. Fane would never forget. This I know, because Fane is now my master. My task? To chronicle the rise and fall of the Godwoken. This was their story. Master, I hope you approve. As for me, I was freed of one covenant only to be enslaved once more. But I am fortunate. I serve Master Fane now. My task? To chronicle the rise and fall of the Godwoken. This was their story. Master, I hope you approve. As for me, the God King never forgot my failure. I know not why he keeps me alive. Each day may be the day that I will finally be punished, that I may finally pay for my sins. As for me, I may have been freed from the Covenant, but the God King never forgot my failure. Each day may be the day that I will be finally punished, that I may finally pay for my sins.
And what of you? You were the key to it all. You brought the Eternals back to the world and saw the God King enslave the thieves. You set right the original wrong, and the Seven were punished for their transgression. Are you proud of all you achieved? Or are you ashamed of your sins?
You, Divine Rose, a true heir to the Seven, more powerful than ever, and united Rivellon in its battle against the Void. All across the realm he was loved, worshipped, and adored. Humans, lizards, elves, and dwarves all rallied to his banner. The Great Allegiance stood once more, but war raged on. With the aid of the Demon Divine and his vast demonic armies, the God King was pushed back into the very depths of the Void. But he was never truly defeated. Still, the new Divine was hailed as the greatest hero Rivellon had ever seen. Alas, harmony was not to last. The Demon Divine desired ever more power. The Demon Wars began. Rivellon was ravaged. The Divine held her ground, if barely. Desperate, the people pray for the rise of a new Godwoken once more. As for me, I was freed of the God King's terrible tyranny. I avoided an eternity of pain and suffering. Now I fight for the other side. Now I fight for the Divine.
Arx remained the centre of power as the races united behind the Divine, but it also became the focus of the demons' attacks. Arx would see many more long years of war. Vulnerable as it was to the machinations of the demons who infiltrated the houses, the ancient empire of lizards was soon brought to its knees. Vulnerable as it was to the machinations of the demons who infiltrated the houses, it took all the skills of the leaders of lizards to keep the empire alive. When the truth of the Divine's betrayal was revealed, Justinia withdrew the dwarves from the fight against the demons. Isolated from the alliance, the dwarves were ill-prepared when the demons attacked. Few survived. With their new dwarven divine, the dwarves led the alliance in the war on the God King. Dwarves led the world, until the truth of the Divine's deal with a demon emerged. The kingdom split from the alliance and fell into chaos. With Justinia dead, the kingdom was free to advance. Dwarven technology was key in the battle against the God King. When the War of the Demons began, the stalwart dwarves stood by the Divine. With Justinia dead, the Dwarven kingdom descended into chaos. They did not join the Divine Alliance. When the demons came, the dwarves were ill-prepared. Few survived. With Lucian gone, the elves reluctantly rejoined the Divine Alliance. Their place in the war on the Void would entirely depend on the integrity of the new Divine. When they learned of the Divine's deal with the demon, they gathered together, opened a portal, and left Rivellon forever. To where, no one knows. But sometimes the trees whisper a name, Nemesis. The elves may have made a terrible mistake. One last Black Ring priestess survived the Void War. When the demons came, she fled into the wilderness, and there, after 39 days and 39 nights, she saw a man calling her name from another plane. His name, Damien. Sir Gareth thanked the surviving Seekers for their service and gave them their freedom. Disillusioned with ongoing war, he set out alone to find a new purpose. He would never stop seeking. With a new Divine at the helm, Malady had a powerful ally, until the war with the demons began. Then Malady the half-demon fell under suspicion from both sides. Having performed the greatest act of necromancy ever witnessed, Tarquin found the new Rivellon unchallenging. He became obsessed with a supposed new world on another plane of existence. One day he vanished, and was never seen in Rivellon again. Free of the God King at last, Riker made a new pact with the demon Divine. After long years as a spy in the world, he took his place at the head of the demonic armies and became one of Adramalik's favourite generals. Jehan the demon hunter found the demon wars deeply worrying, and also terribly good fun. Sahala never trusted the new Divine. She began to search for an alternative plane, a new world where the elves could start again. Tova, her mother, had heard tell of such a place. Its name was Nemesis. The beast returned home as leader. When the war with the demons began, Marcus took the fight out on the open sea. No matter how the kingdom would fare, the beast and the Lady Vengeance sailed on. Fane travelled Rivellon, recording the wonders and demonic horrors he discovered. He always kept a socket peeled for signs of the Eternals, hoping to find the wife he had lost. He's still looking. As the new mother, Sabine founded a new elven homeland. Elves flocked to her, and she became a demi-goddess. Sabine swore never to kill again. But when the demons went to war, her needle would draw blood once more. The Red Prince returned to the Empire, to a hero's acclaim, and soon became Emperor. He used the war on the Void to expand the Empire. The war with the demons gave him battles aplenty, and he relished them all. Returning to the Empire, the Red Prince was hailed a hero. He married Sada, and they had more dragons. Soon, the prince became the Dragon Emperor. Even the demons were afraid. With the rise of Adramalik, demon divine, Lohse could no longer resist. She became his thrall. Though her fans kept her music alive, Lohse would never sing again. And what kind of divine led the fight as the world battled on? Did you regret your deal with the demon divine? Or was the price of power just something that had to be paid?
A new divine rose, a true heir to the Seven, more powerful than ever, and united Rivellon in its battle against the Void. All across the realm he was worshipped and adored. Humans, lizards, elves and dwarves all rallied to his banner. The great allegiance stood once more, but the war continued. From the depths of the Void, the God King still sought to return. As for me, my last hope of ever being freed of the God King's terrible tyranny faded when the God Woken claimed divinity. An eternity of pain and suffering is mine. I cling now to the dream that one day the veil will be sealed, that one day I can be freed, that one day a new God Woken will rise.
War raged on. The ancient empire of lizards became one of the pillars of the new divine alliance. The houses of war and of shadows were particularly useful in the fight against the God King. The empire used the war to expand its territory. Arx remained the center of power as the races united behind the divine. But the Voidwoken attacks continued as they did elsewhere. Arx would see many more long years of war. The ancient empire of lizards became one of the pillars of the new divine alliance. The houses of war and of shadows were particularly useful in the fight against the God King. The empire used the war to expand its territory. Justinia returned to her throne. Under her rule, the Dwarven kingdom fought for the divine, and her loyalty was unquestionable. Many fine and courageous dwarves did their people great honor, in battle and in death. With Justinia dead, the Dwarven Godwoken became the leader of dwarves. Dwarfdom became a center of production, and Dwarven technology became key in the battle against the God King, and the advancement of all the races. With Justinia dead, the Dwarven kingdom descended into chaos. But although they did not join the Divine Alliance, many joined the fight against the Void, and did their people great honor in battle and in death. With their queen dead and a Dwarven divine, the dwarves led the alliance in the battle against the God King. Dwarves became the most advanced of the races. With Lucian gone, the elves reluctantly joined the Divine Alliance. Their place in the war on the Void would entirely depend on the integrity of the new divine. And here and there, across the world, what was left of the Black Ring fought on. The island of Fort Joy remained a sorcerer's paradise, a place of exile for those whose sorcery threatened to bring in the Void. For their well-being, its residents depended entirely on the benevolence of the new divine. Reaper's Coast struggled on. The farms and the fisheries fought to feed the people against the Voidwoken blight. The black pits took fire, the oil there burns still. Driftwood teetered on the edge of starvation until the night the Voidwoken came from the sea. All were killed. This did, however, put an end to the famine. The nameless isle had vanished. Although only open water remained, by instinct ships would steer clear. None of the captains could articulate why. Arx battled on. Sir Gareth thanked the surviving Seekers for their service, and gave them their freedom. Disillusioned with the rising chaos, he set out alone to find a new purpose. He would never stop seeking. Young Han grew up a warrior, and became one of the Alliance's greatest generals, but even he could not win the war. Almira and Mihaili settled in an abandoned homestead. The locals liked and respected Almira. She never wanted for help, and deals always fell to her favor. Outsiders were often suspicious, but no local would speak against her. With a new divine at the helm, Malady had a powerful ally, but she was in no hurry to call in her favour. After all, it might be the last thing she ever did. Having performed the greatest act of necromancy in history, Tarquin found the new world unchallenging. He became obsessed with rumours of another plane of existence. One day he vanished, and was never seen again. Ahu the wizard served the new divine with honour, wisdom, and an at times unnerving feline elegance. The undead priestess Gratiana remained in her sanctuary, happy to wait for the war to pass. She was troubled only by the silence of her goddess. Riker petitioned the newly risen divine to free him of the covenant. Would the divine swing the Sworn-breaker scythe? Riker was potentially a powerful ally in the continuing war. Changed by his experience with the Godwoken, Mordus proved a useful tool in the fight against the Void. The Alliance quickly learned to keep him away from ordinary soldiers for the sake of morale. Jehan the Demon Hunter never stopped hunting for demons. Sahala sought to strengthen the Elven alliance with the new divine. Her powers of sight proved useful in the ongoing war against the Void, but she could never be sure that the new divine trusted her. Tova, her mother, was Sahala's most trusted warrior. Brachus Rex, the long-dead Source King, raised from the dead in the search for the Aeteran, vanished entirely. Some say he still walks the world. Others that he has gone back underground. One thing is true. No one has met him and returned to tell the tale. The Beast of the Sea returned to the Dwarven Kingdom to lead the dwarves in the fight against the Void. After a series of public blunders, Marcus eschewed political power and returned to the sea. The Beast and the Lady Vengeance sail on. Fane travelled Rivellon, notebook in hand, recording the wonders he discovered. He kept a socket peeled for signs of the Eternals, hoping to find the wife he had lost. He's still looking. With a small band of elves, Ifan ben Medzd replanted the lost forests. After the first fresh shoots broke the earth, Ifan returned to the war, leading the elves in service of the divine. Some say Afrit, his soul wolf, walks the forest still. Sabine wandered the world. She became a household name, famed the realm over as a travelling hero, celebrated wherever she went. Enjoying life to the fullest, she was truly and finally free. As the new mother, Sabine found a great forest and founded a new elven homeland. Elves flocked to her and worshipped her as a goddess. Sabine swore never to kill again, but once in a while she'd look at her needle and smile. The Red Prince returned home a hero, and soon became emperor. He used the war on the Void to expand the empire. His house remained true to its name. There was never a day without war. Lohse returned to her music and enjoyed a storied career as the Divine's premier musician. Dark moods would still overtake her, and she would spend long hours walking in the wilds. She always returned with a new song. And what kind of divine was Fane the Eternal as the world battled on? What kind of divine was he as the Eternals took their place in the world? Did he show mercy? Did he sacrifice others to empower his people? Did he wish he had given his soul to the Veil, or was he sure he had done the right thing? Only Fane knows the truth. And what kind of divine was Ifan ben Medzd as the world battled on? Did he help the elves to reclaim the forests? Did he lead the world, or did he wander the wilderness? Only Ifan himself knows the truth. And what kind of divine was Lohse as the world battled on? Did she show mercy or strength? Did she sacrifice others as Lucian had done? Did she regret becoming divine? Did she wonder if she should have given her soul and sealed the veil? Did she deal with her demons? And then there was you. You returned to the world as the undead Godwoken who failed to become divine. Did you accept your failure with dignity, or did it destroy you? Only you know the truth, you and one other, for the God King still calls your name. Do you answer? For how much of this do you take credit, or blame? And what kind of divine were you as the world battled on? Did you show mercy or strength? Did you sacrifice others as Lucian had done? Did you regret becoming divine? Did you wish you had surrendered the power that runs through your veins and sealed the veil? Only you know the truth. Only you know if you atone for your sins.
Dallas the Hammer, the secret eternal, purged the Godwoken and used the source to close the veil to the void. The world was saved. Statues in memory of the Godwoken who sacrificed their source were erected all across Rivellon. They would never be forgotten. The Godwoken themselves became silent monks. Dallas cared for their bodies, the empty vessels that had once carried their formidable souls, until they succumbed to the ravages of time. They were buried in the crypt where Lucian once stole the source from the gods, and where the Godwoken made the ultimate sacrifice. The half-demon Malady took pity on the soulless Godwoken silent monks and brought them to the Hall of Echoes. There, from the scraps of their souls that remained, she restored them to life. Sorcerers no more, they lived out the rest of their lives, freed of the burden of being the Godwoken, freed from the weight of the world. As for me, the Godwoken sacrifice severed the link that bound the Sworn to the God King, and I was finally free. To atone for my sins, I spent the rest of my days taking care of the sick and elderly, telling the story of the Godwoken, that the world may never forget the greatest heroes Rivellon had ever seen. As for me, I was already free, and so were the others. The Godwoken sacrifice severed the bond between the Sworn and the God King. To atone for my sins, I spent the rest of my days taking care of the sick and elderly, telling the story of the Godwoken, that the world may never forget the greatest heroes Rivellon had ever known.
At last, the world was at peace. As the races united behind Lucian, Arx remained the centre of power. The ancient Lizard Empire opened its gates. The houses disbanded, and the Empire adopted a pluralist quasi-democracy. Anyone could vote for whoever they pleased, as long as the House of Shadows approved. Justinia returned to her throne. Under her rule, the Dwarven kingdom prospered, until 2 years later a jealous lover stabbed her in the heart with a mutton fork. Lucian made amends to the elves. He gave them lands and vast riches from the coffers of the old divine order. But the elves never forgave him. They would not trust humans again. The island of Fort Joy, the old redoute of the Source King Brachus Rex, was turned over to the people of Driftwood to use as they wished. They turned it into a holiday resort. Arx became a great metropolis, famed for its prosperity, its culture, its diversity, and the willingness of its denizens to stab each other in the back for the slightest advantage. Sir Gareth thanked the surviving Seekers for their service and gave them their freedom. Disillusioned with peace, he set out alone to find a new purpose. He would never stop seeking. Ahu the Wizard became one of Lucian's most trusted advisers once more. He always knew that something had changed in the divine. He never discovered what that was, or, if he did, he never said a word. Riker languished in his graveyard mansion. As the world prospered, the number of spirits available to serve him would dwindle. Riker faded first into obscurity, then non-existence. Young Han went into the theatre and became one of the realm's most popular actors. Almira and Mihaili settled down on the farm. The locals liked and respected Almira. She never wanted for help, and deals always fell to her favour. She presumed she had them in thrall. The truth was, they just liked her. Jahan the demon hunter found himself at a loose end, so he opened a museum of demonic artifacts. He made a fortune. With Amadia silent, the priestess Gratiana left the swamps and re-entered the world. She founded an abbey in the Dragonspine Mountains, offering the last of the undead shelter from fortune hunters, novelty seekers, and ghouls. With Lucian in power, Sahala took the elves away from the world. They grew strong once more amidst the trees of the regrown home forest. Some say her plans for revenge will bring about the end of days. Some say only Tova, her mother, holds her back. With Lucian in power, Sahala took the elves away from the world. They grew strong once more amidst the trees of the regrown home forest. Only the new mother kept Sahala's plans for revenge from fruition. But the mother had a secret weapon. Tova, Sahala's mother, keeps Sahala's anger at bay. Lucian returned as divine, united the races, and became Lord Emperor of all Rivellon. Only Dallis knew that he was entirely powerless. Dallis and you. The Eternal, now known as Dallis, was a secret adviser to Lucian and to his successors. For eons she would walk in the world, and would outlive the peoples and all, and wander alone amongst the dying stars. The beast of the sea returned to the Dwarven kingdom, not as a rebel, but as a lawmaker. Merciful and wise, he led the dwarves into an age of prosperity. His grave looks out over the sea. His run-in with his daughter set Fane on a new path. He travelled Rivellon, recording the wonders he discovered, but always kept a socket peeled for signs of the Eternals. He hoped to find the wife he'd lost, but he never did. Then again, he's still looking. With a small band of elves, Ifan Ben Mesd replanted the lost elven forests. After the first fresh shoots broke the earth, he disappeared, and was never seen again. Some say Afrit, his soul wolf, walks the forests still. You returned to the world as one more human among many. Your future was yours to decide. Did you accept your new status with humility, or did you rebel? In a world of peace, you could live forever. Your future was yours to decide. But you were a sorcerer no more. Did you accept your new status with gratitude, or did you rebel?
No new divine had risen. Instead, all source was released into the world for all the people and every creature to share. Everyone was now a sorcerer. And united, the peoples of Rivellon pushed back the God King into the very depths of the void. This ushered in a new golden age of peace and prosperity. But alas, it was not to last. With many greedy for wealth, power and position, the struggle soon began anew. Source, the very language of creation, was used in violence once more. The never-ending contest for power continued. As for me, I was freed of the tyranny of the God King. To atone for my sins in this world, I spent the rest of my days taking care of the sick and elderly. I would tell the story of the Godwoken to anyone who would listen. The story of the greatest heroes Rivellon had ever known. The heroes who chose not to close the veil.
The world was at peace, at least for now. With its significance as the seat of divinity diminished, Arx fell into decline, and within 7 generations had emptied. Few were as prepared for the new world as the lizardkin of the ancient empire. With power spread equally throughout the world, the advantage lay with those who knew how to steal it, and at this the lizards excelled. The dwarven Godwoken returned to the kingdom and assumed the dead queen's throne. The new king ruled with grace and integrity, until 2 years later, when a resentful courtier stabbed him to death with a mutton fork. With their queen dead and the Voidwoken gone, the dwarves held the greatest party in the history of dwarfdom. A new king took the throne, the local brewer. 6 days later, he was stabbed to death with a mutton fork. With their power returned, the elves reclaimed their lands from the death fog and began to rebuild. Soon they would split as 2 factions sought power, one to bring back the trees, the other to bring back the scions. A dwarven joke did the rounds. It ends with the punchline, "So Lucian dropped the death fog on them again." Only Sabile could bring the elves together once more. And in a dark forest on the far side of a desert, well beyond the high seas, the Black Ring came together once more. Reaper's Coast prospered. The fisheries returned, and the fertile farmlands produced the greatest harvests the surviving farmers had ever seen. Blood Moon Island became particularly fecund, its soil producing the greatest crops. A particularly crimson-fleshed orange grown on the island became a delicacy across half the world. Driftwood became a centre of industry, trade and transport. Lohar became mayor, and Brayton Barnes grew rich, until, after a public argument over import duties, Barnes died in an accident, buried under several tons of fish, and also stabbed in the back with a gutting knife. Lohar the dwarf became mayor. His time in office was cut short by an unfortunate wound that spontaneously appeared on his neck. Brayton Barnes became a mayor. Years later, he was undone by a scandal involving 3 prominent envoys from the ancient empire and a £25 halibut. He retired in disgrace, his pension intact. Your lizard lover from the Black Bull Tavern finally returned to the ancient lizard empire, there to found the newest and most popular of all the houses, the House of Love. After a long and harrowing journey, Lovric the waiter arrived in Sicile, where he opened a tavern. The meaty stew became famed almost as much for its food as it was for its greasy, abusive owner. Lagan left his over-demanding wife and began a relationship with a local bard. In the spirit of loving generosity, he returned the ring to his now ex-wife. In a fit of rage, she threw it into the sea. You would never forget Dorothea's kiss. Dorothea herself left Driftwood for the ancient empire, ever in search of the perfect kiss. She never found it, although once or twice she came close. Captain Vonda Abelweather became the world's foremost expert on the manufacture of compasses. She died peacefully in her sleep at 93, having saved hundreds and thousands of seafarers' lives. But not all. The nameless isle had vanished. Although only open water remained, ships would steer clear. None of the captains could articulate why. Those who ignored their instincts never returned. Millennia later, adventurers would come in search of the legendary divine city of Arx and the crypt of the great Lucian. None would pass the path of blood. Riker remained in his graveyard mansion, served by the spirits newly arrived there, and of those there were many. Mordus scratched out a living, ending up as a short-order cook. After an epiphany arising from the phrase, "sunny side up," he started a religion. Upon his death from food poisoning, all 3 of his followers committed suicide. Jehan the demon hunter found himself at a loose end, so he opened a museum of demonic artifacts. After it burned down, with Jehan inside, witnesses claimed that the flames were the colour of blood. As the forests grew anew, and the elves were equals at last, Sahala shared elven knowledge of the source with the world. But some elves disagreed and plotted against her. The mother would have to choose sides. Chief amongst her opponents was Tova, Sahala's own mother. With no new divine, Malady found herself in a predicament. She had an important problem to solve, but no ally strong enough to call upon, and so her search continued. With Amadia silent, the priestess Gratiana left the swamps and re-entered the world. With more undead than ever before, she founded an abbey in the Dragonspine Mountains, offering them shelter from hatred and fear. With the source released to the world, Ahu the wizard spent more and more time as a cat. One day he decided he would not change back. The beast of the sea returned to the Dwarven kingdom, this time as a lawmaker. After a very public blunder, Marcus eschewed political power and returned to the sea. The beast and the Lady Vengeance sail on. The Red Prince came home a hero. With Sada he had more dragons. Soon Prince became emperor, one who would not use his dragons for conquest. His realm knew peace, and the world did not burn. The Red Prince came home a hero. Soon Prince became emperor, and his armies marched on their neighbours. The Red Empire was born, and his house remained true to its name. There was never a day without war. Losa returned to her music, and enjoyed a storied career as Rivellon's premier musician. Dark moods would at times overtake her, and she would spend long hours walking in the wilds. She always returned with a new song. As Source flooded Rivellon, Fane set out to record everything he could of this new world. As he travelled, he kept a socket peeled for signs of the Eternals, hoping to find the wife he'd lost. He's still looking.